Yeah. Okay, so we were learning about paying shadchanas yesterday, and we're going to continue in that discussion because it's not an easy topic. So one of the things that he said clearly is that you don't gauge a shadchan's fee based on effort and amount of time put into the shidduch. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort. Sometimes it takes a little effort. And he also said that you have to pay the shadchan's fee, even if the shadchan solicits the couple. Okay. Now, the next thing he writes is, okay, I just also want to point out that that if the shadchan does a small amount of work, you have to pay him his full fee. The Makor Baruch writes as follows: Amnam kol zeh keshahashadchan hitna kefi hamachir shenahug lekabel ba'oto makom. That's provided that the shadchan negotiated a fee that is within reason of the going rate in that place. Aval b'makom shebikesh yoter meharagil, but let's say the shadchan asked for a much higher fee. So then pasak harama b'zelushono. So the Rama writes, "Uv'shadchanus ein lo elas charo, afal pi shehitna imo lo tet lo harbe ad kan lashono." All he gets is his wages, even when he negotiated for a higher amount. Now, what do those words mean? So it seems like that if he does a small amount of work, you don't have to pay him the larger amount. So that's the way he's understanding it, that it's where he asks for an amount that's much higher than the normal going rate. And he ended up doing very little work. The afal pisha hashach sham hevi shamar shal pasak shebchaygav nechayev l'shalom l'shchatchon kol mashu pasak mikol makam amuchsuk yachol liton kim li kaharama shepatur. Even though there's a machlokis on this, and some say that no matter how high his fee is, you have to pay it if that's what he told you up front. Nonetheless, a person can say, I paskin like the Ramah, so I'm only going to pay you the going rate. Now, as far as, so let's go on a little further. That the time of the payment to the shadchan is due when they get engaged. V'im yesh minhag hakol lefi haminhag. D'yesh makamos shenogim l'shalom l'shadchan b'vort. He says, sikmu doesn't mean get engaged. Sikmu is that they agree that they're going to get engaged. That's what I think it means. If there's a minhag, then everything goes according to the minhag. D'yesh mikamot shenogim l'shalom l'shadchan b'vort. Some have a minhag to pay the shadchan at the vort itself. D'yesh mikamot shenogim l'shalom b'yom hanisun. Some pay at the day of the wedding. U'mekayim bazeh mitzvat b'yomot itein scharo. And you fulfill the mitzvah when you pay the shadchan on time, just like any other day laborer who has to be compensated on time by the end of the day. Uvidemei tivuch hamino gulushalim la'achar chasimas hachozeh o la'achar she'asu rak zikaron dvarim b'tzura mechayevet. And as far as the brokerage fee, he's saying in general, when it comes to paying a brokerage fee, similar like a shadchan's or any other industry, the minhag is to pay after the signing of the contract, or after they make zichron devarim b'tzura mechayevet, any kind of sealing of the deal in a legally binding way, or in a binding way. And so he quotes the Rama, who says, the Rama writes, Hashadchin havi kamosir sur. The shadchan is like an agent or a broker. If im hashadchan rotza sheyishalmu lo miyad schar shadchanus v'haba olim enam rotzim l'shalim ad nisuin toli b'minhag hamedina. If the shadchan wants to be paid immediately at the time of, I guess, the agreement that they're going to get engaged, and the owner, the parent, does not want to pay until the wedding day itself, then it'll depend on what the minhag is. Uvamakom she'ein minhag hadinim haba'olim. In a place where there is no established minhag, the parents can do as they wish. Uvamakom she'ein tzarach l'shalim lo ad nisuin im chazru bohen v'nitbatel hashatchanus peturim haba'olim milashalim lo scharo. Then, if in a place where the minhag is not to pay until the wedding day, then if the marriage engagement is broken, then they don't have to pay the shadchan anything. Ela imkein hitnu beheja almanat sheyitpayes, unless they agreed explicitly that if the engagement breaks, they will come to some settlement. V'az tzarach l'shalim lo miyad afilu yachzeru bahen ad kan l'shana. And then they would have to pay him right away, even if the engagement gets broken later. In other words, there are certain situations where if you explicitly negotiate with the shadchan the time of payment, and he said, I'm only going to get involved in the shidduch for you if you pay me once they get engaged, so then you have to follow through on that. So
that's not the normal.
It apparently it depends on the minhag of the place.
Robert, why didn't make a written contract? Like a written
They could, although my understanding is there's generally not a contract. And the reason why is because I don't know that a shadchan has necessarily exclusivity. It could be that there are some shadchanim who do make a contract. Let's say if it's a very high-end shadchan and he wants an exclusive, and he says, I'm only going to work for you if you give me the exclusive on this shidduch. Then it could be there are contracts. I really don't know. I've never heard of it, but it wouldn't surprise me if, let's say, like the high-end shadchanim would take an exclusive. Anyway, he finishes off by saying, and by the way, the next tshuva is going to be about shidduchim also. As soon as the couple is obligated to pay, magia l'shadchan ola mitavech lekabel et schar tircho afilu im hashidduch o ha'iska hitbatlu. He says the shadchan or broker is entitled to be compensated even if the shidduch breaks later. Kevin shehu asa et avodato, since he did his work. Aval im hashidduch hitbatel machmat sheitgala lahem davar sheyesh bo mishum mekachtos. But that's only if, let's say, the engagement breaks just because they realize, we maybe were too hasty with this and we see that we're not really compatible. But there was no revelation of some kind of secret that was being hidden. But let's say the shidduch breaks because there's a mekachtos. There's a revelation that well, you didn't tell me that you're taking medication for mental illness. You didn't tell me that you have this genetic predisposition to not being able to have children, or whatever the situation is. Then then the shadchan has to pay back all the money once the engagement is broken, even if the shadchan was not aware of this secret that was being hidden.
Can she be liable for something else?
And what?
Can she be liable for something else that, because of expenses for the wedding or the shadchan? Say this high-end shadchan is that they charge $25,000. Can they be liable for something or no?
You mean if they maliciously withheld the secret? Perhaps he doesn't address that, but it's very possible. There's a lot of vagary in this tshuva, I have to tell you. There's a lot of vagary in this tshuva. What happens if they get married and then they get divorced a week later? Like I had told you that we had seen in a previous tshuva that if the engagement gets broken, then the shadchan has to return the money. At least that's the minhag. He says nothing like that in this tshuva. He says that is once the payment is due, it's due, and there's no refunds unless there's a mekachtos, unless there's it's discovered that something was hidden, something was covered up. That doesn't seem to be what we saw in a previous tshuva. So let's see. There may be a lot of different opinions here. I want us to start the next tshuva as well and really try to crystallize the different opinions. Okay, here's Siman Kuf Nun Hey. Bachur she'eno shadchan, hitzia lechaver shidduch u'mevakesh demei shadchanas. I went to yeshiva with a guy, and he's not a professional shadchan, but he knows a girl from his hometown who he thinks would be perfect for me, and he presents it to me, and we end up hitting it off, and we get engaged. And now my friend who presented this idea wants compensation. Some friend, right? Yeah. Okay. So here's the question. Chaverish ba yeshiva shuhu lo shadchan. My friend in yeshiva who is not a shadchan, pana elai, v'hitzia li shiduch. He came to me, made a suggestion for a girl that he thinks I would really like. Umasar li mispar telephone bilvad, and all he gave me was a phone number. Val yedei kain hitgalgel hadavar ubaruch Hashem hashiduch ala yafeh. So through that phone number, a number of things occurred, meaning we went out, we met each other in the hotel lobby, and things went well. Baruch Hashem, the shidduch has succeeded. V'cha'et hu doresh demei shadchanas. And now he is seeking compensation as the shadchan. Ha'im ani chayav l'shalem lo, afal pi shelo paniti elav. Do I have to pay him even though I did not solicit his services? Elahu pana elai, but just to the contrary, he approached me. Virak hevi li mispar telephone bilvad, and all he gave me was a telephone number. Like, is that really? Really, you want $5,000 because you gave me a telephone number? Is that really? So that's the question. So what do you say?
Well, did he mention it before he gave the telephone number?
No, he didn't say a word.
So then.
So Doug is.
I think yes, a partial conversation, not the full.
Last one, I think they, to some sense that he.
He didn't negotiate it.
That's
There was no negotiation to start with, nothing understood, he just gave him a telephone number.
I
I
think
mean, if he'd said to him, here's the telephone number I'm gonna charge you for it, the guy was aware, but he could have asked how much, but he didn't.
I think for a meal, taking out for a meal, for drinks.
Look.
That's it.
How you treat your friends afterwards is a different story, but $5,000 is $5,000.
That's $5,000 for a wedding.
For your wife. Ask your wife how the value. Think about it.
Well, according to what you mentioned to me yesterday, when I said that I have a few friends, of people that we've set up, my wife and I, and we were eligible for compensation, even though I didn't want any compensation. So I would say this would be the same situation. So
Yeah.
Why were you eligible for compensation
So-
if you haven't negotiated before, if you haven't told them? You would?
There's really, so the answer to that question would be, well, this is the convention. In other words, in our community, anytime a person is involved in setting up a couple, they're entitled to compensation. That's the convention. Now, not every community is like that. I would say perhaps in like a shul like ours, it isn't always the convention that the person who sets up the couple is expecting compensation. However, I would say that they're expecting something. In other words, if I suggest a shidduch to a young man or a young woman, and it ends up going well, and my wife has done this a number of times, she doesn't say her expectation of getting compensated, but she's received gifts because she's been involved in helping the shidduch materialize through her idea, through her effort. And sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's just coming up with a good idea, and a lot of times just coming up with a good idea makes all the difference in the world. And this happens all the time.
Rabbi,
People do feel an obligation to give something because they know that they owe this shidduch to that person.
It's quite common to have recognition for somebody helping a couple get together. Like at the weddings, they think at the wedding, if you want to give them a gift, whatever. But to come back and ask for a financial, like you say, maybe it's.
Especially if you know the person well, it's a friend or somebody like that.
But even not, I mean, even if it's inside the community, I mean, how many times you've been to a wedding and had somebody explain to you that if it wasn't for so-and-so, these two wouldn't have come together, whatever, I mean. Recognition, give them thanks for what they've done, if you want to give them a present, fine, but to come back and, I don't know, I just find it like, it doesn't sit well with me that after the fact, this person can come back and say, now I want some cash.
Yeah, yeah.
Robin, when you say our community, are you talking about the Clyde community?
Yeah,
You're talking about the Toronto.
I'm talking about the Bayit community. I think there are sub-communities in Toronto where the concept of shadchanis is much more concretized, to the point where it would be unacceptable for a boy and a girl to meet without the involvement of a shadchan. To that point, there are some communities in Toronto where if a boy just happens to see a girl and he goes over to her and says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, would you like to grab a coffee?" That would be like verboten. That would be like unacceptable, right? Whereas in our circles, people have no issue. I see a pretty girl, I can go over to her. Oh, hi, most guys don't do that. They will ask somebody else, who's that girl across the room? Because they don't want to face rejection or turns out she's already married or something like that. Yeah.
But
Anyway.
Rabbi, if somebody introduces, let's say you're in a group of friends and a girl is there and a guy's there with the other people, and they say, "Oh, do you know, Chaya, for instance?" Okay, and then they start talking. Is that considered to be a shadchan or?
I don't think so. I don't think that's considered at all to be a shadchan, because you're just doing what's socially responsible, which is to, it's just good graces to make sure that when strangers get together, you make introductions. So it could be that there was no intention at all, but if the guy who's making the introductions pulled his friend over before they gathered together, and he said, "Look, there's a really nice girl that you're going to be seeing at this place, and I'm going to make an introduction. I think you should think seriously about her for a shidduch," then that would be a shadchan. That's like giving the guy a phone number. Okay. Anyway, let's see. B'halacha yeshnam shnei sugei mitavchim v'shadchanim. In halacha, there are two types of brokers in shadchanim. Sug echad shepoel b'shlichuto shel hamishaleach. One type is a person who operates on behalf of a dispatcher, right? V'hasheni shebo lahatzia l'tavech miyuzmato l'lo shenitbakesh lekach. And the other type of shadchan is someone who suggests a shidduch without being solicited. So the first type is a guy who was retained by a party. In other words, we have a daughter. Yeah, we have a daughter, and we'd like to get her married. So we contact the shadchan and we say to the shadchan, "We would like you to find a nice boy for our daughter." So he's now got his whole Rolodex of boys, and he's going to go through it, and he's going to make the effort. The other kind is a guy who comes unsolicited and is trying to put couples together. Ule'inyan hamitavech shepol b'shlichuto shel halakuach katav harambam hasirsur shaliachu elo shunot el schar shlichuto. Now, the latter kind, the one who is hired, about such a person, the Rambam writes, he is acting as a shaliach, he's acting as a proxy, and he takes his compensation for his proxyship. Aval bedino shel mitavech sheba miyuzmato la'atzia hatza'ah l'tavech dira u'chedoime. But whenever you have a broker or a shadchan who is coming of his own volition, suggesting that you may want to look into this, such as a shadchan, Or such as a guy who says, I hear you're looking for an apartment. Here's a phone number of a guy who's looking to let out his apartment. Kasav harama kol adam sha'osim chavero pe'ula utova lo yuchal lomar bechina masita imadi kiven shelo bikashti mimcha el tzarich l'shalim lo et melos scharo. That if a person does a favor for another person, the person who's the beneficiary cannot say, well, you did it for me for free. You never stipulated in advance that you were expecting to be compensated, and therefore I owe you nothing. You can't say that. If you received the service from someone, even if there was no stipulation of an expectation for compensation, you have to pay. Then you have to pay for that service, even though the person did not say up front, I expect to be paid. Now that's for, let's say, any kind of brokerage service. Now, obviously, this is going to have limitations because not every brokerage service would be entitled necessarily to compensation. It would depend upon the industry standard. Clearly, what the Rama is talking about, where a guy comes unsolicited, provides a brokerage service for which the standard is to pay for that service. But if there's a brokerage service, like let's say I call my friend and say, can you recommend a good plumber? And he gives me the name of a plumber. And the guy turns out to be a really good plumber. Do I now have to pay for as a brokerage fee to that guy for recommending a plumber? Well, that sounds absurd, right? Because people generally do not pay a fee for getting a referral for a plumber. Okay, so there obviously have to be limitations on this.
But it happens in business all the time. Where somebody, you give somebody a referral and then they're making good money from it, then sometimes they'll pay back.
Right. There is it, but it's called a professional courtesy, right? Isn't right? And that's
Why would that be any different?
well, because there's an expectation. That's the difference. The difference is like in the legal business, right? So if I'm a lawyer in one area and Marvin's a lawyer in another area, and someone calls me and says, I need you to help me with a litigation issue, and I say, well, I don't do litigation, but my friend Marv does litigation. So, and I give him the number. So Marv, it's expected that Marv is going to pay me something, or you're going to do something kind to me.
There would be like a reasonable expectation, get or some kind of referral fee for them. And there's a range, you know, 10 to 25%.
Really, that much? Huh?
Yeah, I have a friend who does personal injury, and he advertises that if you send him a case and it turns into a case for personal injury accident case, we'll give you 20%.
Of whatever he takes.
Whatever he gets.
You have
Yeah.
to disclose that to the client though?
What's that?
You have to disclose that.
With the consent of the client, yeah.
Disclosure.
Yeah, so they do, and the client doesn't care. Off of the lawyer's fee anyway.
Yeah, it won't make a difference to the client, right? Well, it shouldn't. make a
Our
difference.
business is all.
Doesn't cost.
I can't take I get a lot of referrals, but I can't get paid for it unless the new client gets a written consent, and also we have to go through the regulators, so it's not so simple.
So help us understand, Hal, why would you have to go through a regulator?
Because it could be a conflict of interest, like am I paying my client, I give referral, extra, less commissions or this and that, so it has to be written down. It's gotta be signed agreement with my client, and if I pay, then it's, then compliance.
What kind of, can you give me an illustration of a
For example,
conflict of
Ron
interest?
refers me, Ron's a client, Ron refers me a good friend of his, large client, and then, Ron wants to get compensated for that. I can't, because I can't get money, because that's one of those ways to get fired immediately. But if Ron can.
So why, you're in the financial business, right? Ron refers let's say a high value, whatever you call it, like a wealthy person who would like to invest with you. Why can't you give Ron money for that?
I'm fired immediately.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Help us understand. Where's the breach of ethics there?
It's a huge breach because he shows I'm paying actually money under the table to him. In that case, it's gotta be disclosed because it can avoid the conflicts of interest. So I may give him Ron better deals, I will give him a better deal than somebody else. And then so it's, I
Showing
can,
favoritism to Ron,
Yeah.
is basically what he's saying.
yeah, and then what if I, in case if I'm at the table, I'm fired immediately. And then if I disclose it to the compliance department, I need lots of paper, a lot of disclosures. And I have to get Ron to sign an agreement, and I have to get.
What kind of agreement does Ron have to sign?
Like how much is he gonna get paid if there are referrals and for future referrals and stuff like that.
Um,
And then the client that referred to me also needs to disclose that. I'm very frowned on that.
But what if you were to give Ron a bottle of wine as a thank you?
That's fine. That's,
Yeah.
that's under a certain
The
amount.
the cash is the problem, not the.
No, anything. If I take Ron out to hockey, I have to disclose it.
Oh, wow.
I have to disclose it. And of a certain amount, they're very, I have one big brokerage company that's gone now, because the president was sort of pushed to one of his bigger institutional clients to for a special, I forget what, at least finals or at least hockey tickets, which is like $2,000, whatever. Has found out about it and was fired. And the company's gone.
well,
That's changed last 10 years.
okay.
So, the colleges have very tight regulations, so that there's no, no sense that you're, gaining from another, source like the drug companies. Who used to come and try to take us out for, lunches or hockey tickets or golf or whatever it may be. And that really got shut down because it became sort of clear that we're using their drugs because we're more likely to use their drugs because of these peasants that we're getting, so to speak.
I see,
compensation.
I see.
You
Okay.
see, for
It's a voucher.
I got hockey ticket, like Fideli's took me out for a hockey game, my son and myself. In the old days, he used to give us tickets. Give us tickets and go with your wife, whatever. They have to be there.
How does that change things when they're there?
It's just because they're not, it's a business deal. It's schmoozing, it's a business. We talk,
Business meeting.
definitely part of business.
Uh-huh.
Business
Okay,
meeting.
you can write it off
That's
as an
the-
expense.
that's-
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fidel
business
used to
expense.
actually fly people to Boston for conferences, and that's all done. The business got very, very tight. It's good for investment community because it takes away the conflicts of interest. They really try to avoid that.
Is it because you sell different financial products? Is that
Yeah,
the reason?
we get so many choices to deal with. And one guy, hey, here's a free trip to Barbados and do business with me,
Uh-huh.
which may not be the best for the client.
Even drugs is a big thing. And we saw it when we happened with Sackers and with hydrocodone and all that, how they influence the use of the drug through presence and through trips and through things like that. So
Right.
it's almost like, putting something in front of a judge that's going to be favorable and that.
Right,
influences it.
right.
That's why-
But Joey, how do they monitor it with the
Well,
drug?
they created incredibly tight rules for the drug companies and for the doctors.
That's why you see all the drug companies advertising on TV now, not to the doctors.
And if there's gonna be any kind of relationship with the drug company, it's gotta be a teaching session. So they come to our office and they say, okay, Cafe Chalet, and they teach us at the same time.
But they'll still give you samples, right?
We'll give samples. So samples is still part of the whole thing, but there's usually a teaching concept with the sample given. Can't just give samples, but many times they do just give samples. But that's different than saying, here's, a couple $1,000 with, tickets to whatever it is. Then you become, you like them, well, these guys are really good, I'll use more of that and give me more tickets and it becomes like a.
Quid pro quo.
Okay.
Okay, we'll hold it here for today. We'll pick this up in Mirz Hashem. I'm away next week. I get back late Wednesday night, so I think what I'm gonna do is we'll just we'll put our share on hold for all of next week and we'll resume a week
Long week,
from.
there's only a couple days, right? Because we have Boxing Day and in Canada, we have Boxing Day. You don't have it in the States, so we have
You got Hanukkah,
Xmas,
But we'll be on for Monday. What is-
Monday, Tuesday, right?
well,
Monday,
so-
Tuesday.
So I'll see you a week from Monday. How's that? Okay.
Manitoulin Island.
Which island?
Manitoulin Island, the largest island in freshwater in the world.